This is Rod from the Toad Fish Mafia. Here today to go over a couple of things we're going to put on the new Gray Ghost Autopilot 136. We picked it up, added it to our fleet. Looking forward to get it all tricked out and ready to go. So I got a whole box of goodies over here. I'm going to walk you through all the stuff that we've got, what I tend to use, what I'm transitioning from my Autopilot 120 that I've been using for a while. The infamous yakking off, if you've seen it anywhere around Facebook or social media. We'll take these bits, and some of them are going to transfer from one unit to the other. A lot of them are duplications between the two units. So I'm going to show you what each of those are and how we use them, and just to give you some ideas and see how we're going to trick it out. Let us know what you think of it in the comments and whatnot. Keep an eye out for more content with the Gray Ghost unit on the water, and also some time lapses and other videos of us actually putting it all together. Stay tuned. Let me start off with one of the most important things you're going to need on your kayak. It's not something that people think about a whole lot. Super helpful for all the first responders in your area. Contact card. Basically a sticker you can put on your kayak. It's got your name and information and your phone number. They can reach out to you. There's a storm comes through. Here we are in Eastern North Carolina. There's a lot of hurricanes. If a hurricane takes your kayak and chucks it out in the water, first responders are running around and they find your kayak abandoned floating in the water. They want to know whether or not you were on that kayak and if they need to come looking for you, or if you're at home and it's just going adrift on its own. They'll call this number, and when they hear that you're good, everybody's safe, then they'll let you know where it is, and that's the end of it. If they can't reach up with you, they're going to keep looking for you to make sure you're not stranded out there drowning somewhere. Super important. You can usually get these free from the Coast Guard. You can find them online. Maybe a couple of bucks, somebody will send you a couple. Highly recommend it. Put it somewhere conspicuous on your kayak when you get it. Save you a lot of trouble down the road and help all the first responders in your area make sure you're safe. All right, so the first company of materials we're actually going to put onto the new Gray Ghost are going to be a series of products from a company called Line Cutters, based out of Texas. They're a company that was on Shark Tank. They devised these fancy line cutters initially with metal blades, and eventually they've transitioned to these ceramic blades, which are obviously perfectly tolerant of saltwater conditions. They stay very sharp and are good at cutting braid up to at least 100 pounds, if not higher. I've used them on 100-pound braid. I've used them on 100-pound mono successfully. Kind of overkill for fishing out of the kayak in a lot of applications, but it's good to know they'll work. We also use them for much lower diameter lines. 10-pound mono and 10-pound braid are cut through it like butter without any issues. I got a couple varieties. They have a zipper pull washroom that you can actually mount to your clothing, or you can still actually connect it to your kayak on a pull string or something like that. Works really well. They also have surface mount glue varieties. It uses 3M glue to stick to wherever you want. I tend to have one of these around just for convenience. If I'm fighting a fish and something gets snarled up and I need to just get the line out, get the fish in, and I just want to get a knot cut out of the way, do what I need to do because of kind of a snafu on the water, it's nice to have one there. You can just pull the line through, cut it, move on with your business. So good, useful tools. Additionally, I also use these micro scissors. It's basically a normal style set of snips with the additional blade cutter on the back. It does have a hat clip in this particular setup, which is pretty cool. So if it's something you just want to wear, you can just clip it onto yourself. I tend to actually hook lanyards to the little loop at the top and have it as on a pull string, so I can pull them up, snip when I need to snip, or cut the line as I need to. Works extremely well to match the color scheme of the Gray Ghost and the orange highlights from the Old Town Sportsman models. I picked these all up in bright orange. It's a newer color just released by Line Cutters, available on their website. So these are pretty good tools, very helpful in cutting line, keeping you fishing all your lines as you need to, getting everything cut, tied on, makes you swap lures real easy. So good stuff. All right, so any good kayak has some good electrical bits on them, especially our GPSs and fish finders, things of that nature. I power mine with the Nokia style 10 amp hour lithium batteries. These have been great for me. They're perfectly sealed. I don't have to worry about them being around in the hull. I did use some double-sided Velcro inside my AP120. I'm going to replicate that into the Gray Ghost 136 to use it just to secure the battery pack inside the hull itself, and then run the connections accordingly. The connections you can get separately. It comes with the battery for one installation, because I'm going to use the same battery and the same fish finder on both kayaks initially. Eventually I'll probably add on a second one. Before I do that though, I want to be able to use them on each system. So to pull that off, I need to do a single installation or a separate installation on both kayaks. So I'll have the individual battery with its little twist-on connections, and then I'll have, in addition to that, separate power connections for each of the two systems. So in this case, the power connector for the Garmin, that'll be connected to the adapter for the Nakua. The Nakua gear wire setup. So this is basically, these are all available from Nakua and various other sites. And most importantly, if you're in the eastern North Carolina area, right around Morehead City, a lot of the stuff you can get from or have ordered at Trusty Sail and Paddle out of Morehead City. So this adapter is basically the opposite end of the plug from the battery. Has the electrical connections that you can then splice to the power connections from the fish finder. So each of the AP rigs are going to have this wiring connections, the one that the battery connects to, and the actual connections to the physical fish finder mount. I use Garmin fish finders, or chart plotters. So the system I use is basically it's a Garmin UHD 73 SV. We got the 73s on a really stupid deal online a long time ago, before we had our deals with Trusty, and they really became a Garmin dealer, or I would have bought it local. So when I go to buy another one for the Gray Ghost, I'm surely going to get it from Trusty. They have one there in stock right now. I'm kind of an eye. They'll definitely have some, and can get them in the future as well if you go in and they happen to be bought out at that time. So I have the separate cradle unit, the attach point, and then of course some mounts and things I'm gonna get into. So this will all connect up and make it to where I have a cradle system physically mounted on the existing kayak and have one on the new kayak, and therefore I can just transfer the head unit from one to the next. Now, in order to facilitate having one head unit running two separate connections on both kayaks, the one catch is you got to have two transducers. A while back I was able to acquire a second transducer, so that's worked out well for me. My Autopilot 120 has a GT54 transducer on it, and inside this bag, this is a GT56. It's got some special adjustments on it. 56 is one of the newer models for Garmin about this time. I'm sure they got other stuff coming out, UHD2 and some other things. I'm not looking to invest that kind of significant amount of upgrades. They don't necessarily have to have the latest and greatest. Just a good quality fish finder to see depth, see structure, see fish in certain conditions. Side scan, super helpful. We're definitely able to pick up schools of trout and other fish just on a side scan as you're cruising around. Don't get me wrong, we'll definitely leave a bait trolling along behind us as we go, just to see if something takes a bite. But the number of times that we've been cruising along and I happen to see something off on the distance on side scan, just meander over and chuck a bait in and end up finding a fish or a series of fish, and then be able to sit there and fish a spot that I would have just blown past otherwise for a couple hours even, has really been common, surprisingly, and it's all due to that side scan capability. For this particular transducer, I've already mounted some additional items I get from Yak Hobby, available online. One is a more ruggedized mount with some adjustment slots that work really well for Old Town kayaks. They have a fancy name for it. I don't remember what it is, tight tuck or something like that. Basically, you just bolt it to the existing mount and mounting holes. You take the existing black cover off from the Old Town, you put this in its place and screw it in place, and then you press it all the way to the top before you secure it down, so it kind of tucks in pretty well. And then this is a new thing I'm trying on this particular one that Yak Hobby recently came out with, and that is this little protector bumper on the end of the piece. I use a trailer for my kayak, and in the act of launching the kayak, just because they're heavy, I mean, anybody who's messed with these things know they're 100 pounds dry weight. By the time I load it out with all the gear I have, because I have a serious gear addiction, the thing's pretty darn heavy. As it's coming off the trailer, it's very easy for these units to catch on the trailer pieces themselves. I've done a pretty decent job, I think, to try to minimize that with the way I've configured the bunks on the trailer. But in certain conditions, tide, current, and everything, and just how far you back the trailer down can all affect how well that kayak comes off and what it's... Alright, so one of the items I'm also going to swap between the two units is going to be my Power Pull micro anchor. They're a little pricey as well, so I'm not yet investing in two full units on either one. What I have done instead is buy an additional bracket from Power Pull that will allow you to mount the unit to the kayak itself. So I have one that's on the existing kayak that tends to have the power pole on it currently, and then I'll put this mount on the Gray Ghost. So it's just a matter of using the attach points on the bracket itself to mount the unit between the two, depending on which one I'm using that day. If you're familiar with the Old Town autopilots, you know that if you're using a micro anchor, sometimes there's an issue with getting full rudder control authority on the unit because of potential impingement on these brackets or on the power pole itself. One solution we stumbled upon on the internet was from the Kayak. It's an offset bracket. So instead of being dead parallel with the keel, this just bumps the power pole up slightly and gives it a slight angularity away from the center line. That gives that rudder full control authority. So to some of the more typical stuff. Of course, we in the Toad Fish Mafia absolutely love the Yak Sac solutions for various kayak accessories. There's lots of great stuff. All super interchangeable, super durable. So I got a handful of items that I'll be using rather than transferring them back and forth between the two units. Just bought some extra ones. These are all available at Trusty in Morehead City. I don't know where you're from if you're watching this, but in our area here in Eastern North Carolina, most of the kayak shops or most of the fishing shops have a small selection of accessories. I mean, a couple items here or there, maybe one of each kind maximum. And in a lot of cases, you get just a couple of popular items. Some of the more obscure stuff that you could probably find a little more useful than you'd realize if you knew it existed. It's not the kind of thing you'd find in most of these stores. Luckily, Trusty, when they started out, took the philosophy of ordering one of everything. So if you walk in that store, you look around, you realize there's a very robust product line available from a company like Yak Sac, and you can actually see them all there, work with them, integrate them. And if you need anything custom done, one of Trusty's big sells, one of the greatest skill sets that they provide to the area is that they customize installations on kayaks using a variety of materials, including going to local manufacturers and having metal brackets and things adapted. So if you're not good at doing any CNC machining yourself, you don't have to. Andrew and the folks there are able to put some good solutions together using the existing stuff from Yak Sac and other companies and being able to adapt that to whatever variety or situation you're going to need. So definitely a big shout out to them. You'll hear a lot about them. We are, yes, affiliated with them, of course, but even if we weren't, we'd be going there and buying all the stuff from them anyway. They're one of the few locations that have it. They're competitive even with online Amazon prices, and super friendly, great customer service. So definitely something that we would be associated with regardless. So for the Yak Sac stuff that we use, one of the things that I tend to use for is the double header. I have it rigged up with the I think it's the park and pole attach points. I use the paddle holder on the side of the kayak that comes from Old Town. Seems to work perfectly fine for me, so the benefit of having a paddle holder on the double header doesn't really do a whole lot for me. But what I do have is a manual, like stakeout stick or a park and pole. So I use that on the double header, and then the connection on the double header here where you have the option to add a lock and load base from Yak Sac. That's where I mount my fish finder. And then both of these together as a system are mounted to a Navari handle replacement so that it can be right next to the seat. I like having it right there with me so I can adjust side scan and mess with my GPS very easily while fishing. The beauty of the lock and load system with Yak Sac is you can press the release button and actually move the system out of the way or just adjust it without the fear of it falling overboard. My ability to remove it and get it out of the way makes it easy to paddle the unit if I need to. On the autopilots, obviously, with the trolling motor, you don't really have a big issue with paddling in most cases. I don't intend to. I'm fat, I'm lazy, I don't plan to do a whole lot of paddling much at all, so having this right next to my seat isn't a big deal. If I have a battery issue or a motor issue and I do have to paddle back to the launch point, then I can just easily move it out of the way. And I do that by having an extra lock and load base just mounted on one of the rails that I can move the GPS to so that I have freedom of motion in doing the paddling. Thankfully that hasn't happened yet. Hopefully won't be anytime soon. There's going to be some tips on how to do that. Most importantly, take care of your batteries, take care of your electrical connections, make sure that those are all in good working order, and minimizes your chances of having any issues on the water. I also use the Yak Sac XL cleat. Having come from boats, I do like to use tie-down lines when I'm at the docks. I'll use a line, a dock line or a bow line on the unit itself to get it on the trailer. I'll show you that in a little bit. This cleat option makes it easy to have a simple tie down. You can tie two kayaks together pretty easily. You can tie it to the dock easily. I like the little longer legs that come on the XL versus the shorter version that Yak Sac has. But nice and simple, pretty durable. And then I use tie-down eyes. There's a couple different varieties you can get on the internet, but I like these the most. With the base, the way Yak Sac does these, you can connect any lanyards on any kind of pull chains to these very quickly. You can use them to run cables through to protect them. So pretty awesome solution in that regard as well. And they just go into the same geared track solutions that the rest of the Old Town uses. So continuing on with some of the other stuff that we use, I talked earlier about mounting the fish finder that I use for the handles from Navari. We have those here. I use the same one on both sides. I like having the GPS on one side, and I like having a Yak Sac style rod holder on the other. Easy for trolling, simple place to put your rod while you're fighting a fish. There are forward-facing rod holders, obviously, in the Old Towns as well. I do find myself actually tending to use those to hold things like the GoPros. Just a place to drop one in, have it ready, available to pick up, get a quick shot. So because of that, so readily available, I like having the other rod holder ready to actually physically hold a rod. Obviously, you can take the camera out of the way, put the rod holder on there, or put the rod in the rod holder. It's not a big deal, but it just gives you some variety. When I'm fighting a big fish right next to the boat, the last thing I wanted to have to do is think about what's going on. So just having options and be able to see a spot, stick it somewhere, and go is very, very helpful. Another item that I use on my kayak is the Yak Sac. It's actually a pretty cool unit. It's waterproof, has a good sealed zipper on the front. I have this mounted to the front of my seat on the AP120. I want to mount it similarly on the 136. I find this one very effective in holding packs of Z-Mans and other soft baits. You can stick jig heads in here, tools, anything you really want to. So I'll usually mount this directly to the seat using the clips. Works really, really well in the front of the Old Town seat and provides something easy access where you're right there fishing, right under your legs, you're able to knock it out whenever you need something. In addition to that, I also strap to it. Wilderness makes a really cool pouch. They call it the mesh storage sleeve. I don't know what it was officially called, but I tell you, it's one of the better pouches I've seen. It holds a remarkable amount of material for the size of the unit. I have one of these packed to the absolute gills on my AP120. It seems pretty straightforward. It's just one big pouch with a strap down. But I have this packed up with gear, with scents, with anything else you can think of that you're going to use for inshore fishing. Z-Man soft bait packages, jig head packages. Sometimes I'll stick a camera in here if I need it. I'll stick my cell phone in there if I need it. There's really no limit to it. It's large enough and stretchy enough that you can pretty much put whatever you like. And with a little tie-down strap on the top, I've been able to pack stuff in here and then drive down the highway and don't have any fear of this stuff coming out as long as it's packed well and secure. I talked earlier about having a gear addiction, so I got a whole bunch of stuff jammed in the kayak. These two together make a system where I have a lot of stuff really easily accessible without having to reach behind me or do anything. So I'll actually connect these together where I'll have the Yak Sac mounted to the seat. I'll have the wilderness pack tied in the front of the Yak Sac itself. And that gives me options to probably 60% of the solutions I need on the water for catching different fish, changing lures on the fly, and being ready to keep going, keep fishing. It's one of the reasons I like the autopilot solution, having the steering via the feet, being able to set the motor to just dead ahead with a little bit of speed on, and then use my feet to control the kayak left and right as I spend all my time fishing. The other guys in the team have autopilot. They have Old Town Sportsman PDLs, which they're great for backing up and they're great for going forward, and they are faster than my autopilots are. We'll see how they are to the 136 when I get them side by side. For the 120 though, they're definitely faster, and they can pedal at a reasonable pace and actually pull away from me. Probably two parts. One, the whole design of the 120, and also because I'm a big guy with a lot of gear, so I'm right close to the weight limit on the 120 as it is. So they are able to go faster. What they're not able to do is turn quite as easily as I am, and they have to adjust their kayaks manually all the time when they're fishing. And they have to do that. They have to take a hand off and grab the actual steering mechanism while they're pedaling. So they have 2 legs and an arm engaged in moving the kayak and only 1 hand left to fish, where I can continue to move my kayak using just my legs, and I can do all the fishing movements that I need to. So I probably get 2 to 3 times as many casts in the same area as they do. It drives them a little bonkers at times, because I'll end up catching more fish that way, because I just have more opportunities to keep fanning through the strike zone, getting more bites and getting more fish while they're spending time adjusting their kayaks. Now, they are a little quieter than I am, they're a little faster than I am, but for me it works out having those capabilities. And to be able to continue to fish that effectively, I need to be able to grab stuff in a hurry when I need to change something up. And having these 2 rigged together right underneath the seat in front of me makes it really simple, really easy to grab something, tie it on, get back out there really quick. So new on the Autopilot 136 for me this time, I'm going to try out this, I guess you call it a standoff. There's an official name for it on the Navarre site. I'm just terrible about those, knowing the names. We're not affiliated with Navarre in any way, or Navarre, however you pronounce it. It's a great company, they make really good products. Nick is super helpful. So I got nothing but respect for those folks. We don't have any official affiliation with them at all, but I have sent them a good bit of money, acquiring a lot of their useful gear, a lot of really cool slick designs. So a lot of respect for them. This particular piece I got to try. I picked this up to put on the Pre-Rigout specifically for the purposes of how I rig my stakeout poles. I mentioned using the Yak Sac double header and using the power pole micro anchor. I love using the micro anchor as like the first point. So if I'm running up on an area, especially if the wind's at my back, it works perfect. I can pin myself down and immediately start fishing. If I'm cruising by an area and I hook up on a fish and I don't want to go any further to spook anything that's further along, I'll immediately drop the power pole, let it pin it, let the whole the kayak stay in place. I won't usually use spot lock because it tends to stir up the bottom a lot, especially if you're in real shallow areas. I'm not trying to disturb the fish. I'm trying to be as quiet as possible. So in certain cases where wind and current, after you pin, eventually the kayak will swing into a different orientation than potentially you'd want to use to actually make the best cast or the best presentation to that area. So we'll use a secondary pole. So that double header pole, the manual power parking pole or stakeout stick or whatever version you have, what we'll do is I'll pin the back first and get the kayak stationary for a second, and as it starts to settle in, I'll take the manual pole, stick it, and then use that to hold the orientation I want. And I can sit there and continue to fish an area quietly. I can tie back on if I got pulled in some moisture rock or something and need to put a new leader on. I can do all of that and get back out quickly. As I do it now, I either stick it just on the side of the kayak or tie it through a ring with a rope on it. I find I don't tend to use it as often or don't go through all the rigmarole of putting that all together. So this solution, and I'm sure there's other versions of it like it on the internet, but this version from Navarre looks like it'll do the job. Pretty straightforward. Pull it out of the Yak Sac double header and immediately just slide it down into pin it down, stick the kayak where I want to stick it and go. So looking forward to trying this out and seeing how well it works and see if it stays part of the permanent repertoire. If it does work really well, then I'll probably end up putting one on the AP120 as well and getting rid of the ring and string or cord version that I've been using. All right, another company that has some good gear that we like. It's a new one I've recently seen come out all over social media. It's called Magnalore. This company produces these pads that have magnets built into them. You see versions of it. You can do your own DIY version. Just put a magnet somewhere on your kayak. I like the idea of having them in this rubber pad where it's protected from the salt. Corrosion and everything is, of course, one of the worst things you can experience. In our area of the woods, we have a lot of brackish water and salt water. So we do a little bit of freshwater fishing, but mostly brackish and salt water. So that exposure to salt is very common. So anything we can do to stay away from the salt or keep the salt away from our gear is helpful. This particular pad it's a 4x6 inch pad. Has an adhesive patch on the back that I think it's the 3M grade adhesive double-sided tape. Does a surprisingly good job of bonding to the Old Town kayaks. I like to put this in the third well on the right hand side of the APs. That's an area where I can just throw a lure, throw a jig head, attach pliers, hemostats, anything I need to use while landing and releasing fish, and rigging up So I put one on the 120. You've used that for several trips. Very useful. So I picked one up for the 136 Gray Ghost as well. And you'll see me mount this as part of the rigging up video. But cleaning up a little bit here. Goes a lot of gear, and this is just the basic rigging stuff I'm talking about using on the 136. Looking forward to getting it set up and ready to go. I did mention earlier about coming from a boat. We use dock lines and things of that nature. It's just a rope that I picked up probably off Amazon. I shop so many different places. If you do have a local store that has the ability to make good marine quality ropes, it's not a bad idea to pick one up. It doesn't have to be anything. Paracord will work technically. Doesn't have to be anything special. I like this version. It's a 5/8 inch diameter rope, a little easier to grip, easy to tie around pilings at the docks. And this particular one has, of course, a pre-made hoop on it. And all I did is attach it to a stainless steel clip and a stainless steel ring. There's a lot of different ways you can rig it to the kayak. What I do is I put this around the front handle and then use it as a tie-down point for the connection on my trailer, rather than actually mounting a physical cleat attach point or a ring to the physical hull like you would on a boat. I just use this to wrap it around the physical handle on the front and then just connect the connection to it, secure that down, and that holds the front of the kayak itself as I'm launching. So I can take my travel straps off, the cam lock straps off of the kayak, back it down a ramp if I'm launching from there, and then just use this connection to actually launch the physical kayak. So I'll disconnect it from the kayak connection itself on the ring, and then I'll just use this line, lift up the bow of the kayak, let it slide down the PVC pipes that are on the trailer itself. Then just use this actual bow line to pull it over, tie it off to the dock, and get ready to go. One other item that's going to be a little different that I'm using on the AP136 versus the 120 is I picked up some EMI shielding braided cable. I've read several places online where they show that this can actually minimize interference as well with the Garmin units. It doesn't take a lot of research on the internet to see that there is some cases where you can get interference between the Minn Kota motor and the Garmin transducers. You can minimize that obviously by using a separate battery, which I do, by running the wires separately between what's running your motor versus what's running your fish finder. They're running down opposite sides of the hull, and I'll do that again when I rig up the 136. I did read where also applying the shielding cable around the transducer wire will also assist with that, because I'm looking for the optimum picture. It seems to work well with just interference set to low on the unit and having those rigged the way they are. I can see some artifacts that are on there, but it doesn't really distort the picture in a way that makes it unusable or really annoying. I usually forget about it until I'm staring at it while actively turning the motor on and off, and I'll see faint lines pop up and realize, oh yeah, that's just some interference. But it's pretty minor by comparison, thankfully. If the transducer gets really close to the motor, which it may with this larger DT56, then that may be a bigger concern, which is why I'm going to go ahead and use the shielded cable as well to try to maximize that clarity. Alrighty, I think that's about everything that I've got set aside for installation on the Gray Ghost separately from the 120. Like I said, there'll be a few things that'll be swapped back and forth as I go through and do like a time-lapse build-up of all the pieces. Any of the little oddities where I'm doing any kind of installations, I'll break out and record that as areas separately and splice that all together. I don't like making really long, horribly boring videos, so hopefully it'll be fairly straight to the point. The stuff that's pretty rudimentary we'll try to time-lapse through pretty quickly, so you can just see how it went together, see if it's curious for you, or can give you ideas on how you may want to rig stuff up. Feel free to reply back any comments with any ideas you have. If you see something that looks silly, like, why are you doing it that way? Do it this way. We're not perfect. We're always open to new ideas. We bounce ideas off each other. It's one of the things we love about being in our fishing team, is that we got guys that come from different backgrounds, so we have a lot of different skill sets that we bring in, a lot of different ideas. So as we get together and work on stuff and fish together, it's amazing how somebody will think of one thing, somebody will think of something else, and when we use both of those, we end up having a lot more success. So check us out on social media if you're interested, and hit us up with any questions or comments. Again, if you're in the eastern North Carolina area, feel free to swing by Trusty Sail and Paddle, Morehead City. They pretty much got everything you could need for a kayak. They've got sailing vessels. They've got more kayaks in stock than any place I've ever seen around here. They've got more gear in stock than any place I've seen. for kayaks. It's pretty amazing shop. They're really good people. It's nice to see a small local family-owned business that's doing really well and doing some pretty amazing stuff. We're very honored to be affiliated with them and look forward to a very long and fruitful relationship as they continue to bring their services to the area here in Eastern North Carolina. See you next time.